The bridge had learned his weight. It no longer rang in surprise when his boots struck its surface, no longer complained when he leaned against the low guardrail to catch his breath. It accepted him the way old machinery accepts misuse, with a tired groan and the promise that someday it would remember. Below, the chasm glowed with heat and drifting debris, a slow river of ruined drones and melted stone, and above, the sky flickered with distant artillery like a storm that had lost interest in weather and discovered war instead. He checked his rifle out of habit. The counter blinked a number so low it felt insulting. The rifle, at least, had the decency not to comment. The bridge, if it could talk, would probably ask him why he was still here. He would have liked to answer that question himself. Orders had ended hours ago. The command channel had gone quiet in a way that suggested not courage, but paperwork finally giving up. Retreat had been suggested, then recommended, then phrased as a personal favor. After that, nothing. "Well," he muttered to the empty span, "guess it's just us." The bridge did not reply. That was fair. He hadn't been very talkative either, unless one counted the occasional complaint directed at the universe. The universe, so far, had refused to issue refunds. Something hissed past his head and struck the far end of the bridge, splashing blue-white light across the alloy surface. He ducked by reflex, then frowned. "That was rude," he said, mostly to himself. "You could at least knock." More shots followed, measured and patient. Alien fire. Clean. Precise. None of the wild panic of human artillery. Whoever was shooting knew exactly how much force it took to turn a man into an idea. The bridge shuddered but held. It always did. Ancient alien engineering had a sense of pride about these things. He returned fire, not because he expected to hit anything, but because silence felt like an invitation. The recoil thumped into his shoulder, familiar and oddly comforting, like the handshake of an old enemy. Something exploded in the distance. Something else screamed, a sharp mechanical wail that ended abruptly. "See," he called out. "We can all be polite." Minutes stretched, or seconds. Time had become flexible lately, bending around adrenaline and exhaustion until it felt more like a suggestion than a rule. He adjusted his stance, wincing as pain reminded him of injuries he'd been postponing. Blood had dried on his sleeve in stiff, dark patterns. It didn't seem urgent anymore. Everything important was on the other side of the bridge, and everything trying to kill him was on this one. A shape emerged through the smoke, then another. Alien infantry, tall and angular, armor segmented like insect shells, weapons glowing with restrained violence. They advanced cautiously, clearly confused by the lack of resistance. One man was not supposed to slow an army. One man was not supposed to be funny about it. He waited until they were close enough to see his face. He waved. They stopped. That was new. "Hi," he said. "Bad day to cross. Bridges closed. Structural issues." They opened fire. So much for customer service. The fight that followed was messy and unheroic. He moved because standing still was unhealthy. He shot because not shooting felt worse. He tripped once, swore loudly, and accidentally discovered that an alien shock blade made an excellent pole vault if you were desperate enough. By the time the last body hit the bridge, he was laughing, a thin, cracked sound that surprised him as much as it would have surprised anyone else still alive to hear it. "Okay," he said, gasping. "That one counts as cardio." Silence returned, heavier than before. No more footsteps, no more shots. Even the distant artillery paused as if someone had raised a hand and said, "Wait." He didn't like that. Noise meant predictability. Silence meant decisions were being made somewhere with more authority than he had ever enjoyed. He leaned against the railing again, staring at the far horizon. The bridge stretched ahead, scarred but intact, its surface glowing faintly under emergency power. It had been built to connect worlds, not defend them. He wondered if it resented the assignment as much as he did. A ripple passed through the air. Not a sound, not a flash. A distortion, like reality briefly reconsidering its shape. He straightened slowly, every instinct suddenly alert in a way that had nothing to do with training. This wasn't another squad. This wasn't more of the same. This was personal. She stepped onto the bridge as if it belonged to her. No armor at first glance, just a form-fitting suit of dark material that shimmered with subtle energy. She looked human enough to be unsettling. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face calm and composed, eyes sharp with intelligence rather than rage. Then he saw her ears, long and elegant, extending back in a way no human anatomy ever had, catching the light like blades. "Well," he said after a moment, because silence was apparently his enemy today, "you're new." Her gaze fixed on him, not scanning the battlefield, not assessing damage, just him, as if the entire ruined bridge were background noise. "You are the one," she said. Her voice was smooth, carrying easily across the span, not loud, not soft, precisely enough. He glanced behind him, then back at her. "I checked, still just me." She studied him the way one might study a puzzle that refused to be solved out of spite. "You were meant to fall. I get that a lot." A faint curve touched her lips, not quite a smile, more like an acknowledgement that humor existed even if she did not approve of it. "You have delayed my forces. Traffic control is a hobby." She took another step forward. The bridge did not protest. It seemed traitorously impressed. "I am told you stood alone," she said. He shrugged. "Standing is easier than lying down. Lying down tends to be permanent." Her eyes flicked briefly to the bodies scattered behind him, then back. "You are injured. Emotionally or physically, because I've got a whole list." That did it, a real smile this time, sharp and brief, dangerous. "You are strange." "Yeah, Earth does that to you." They faced each other across the scarred bridge, fire and blood cooling around them, silence stretching but no longer empty. He didn't know what would happen next. He suspected it would hurt. Still, he tightened his grip on his rifle and lifted his chin. "Well," he said, "if you're here to cross, you're going to have to go through me." She inclined her head slightly, long ears catching the light. "I was hoping you would say that." She did not attack immediately, which was unsettling in a way explosions never were. She stood there, balanced and unhurried, as if time itself had agreed to slow down for her convenience. The bridge hummed faintly under their feet, a low vibration that suggested it was listening, or perhaps judging. "You are injured," she said again, this time less like an observation and more like a decision being filed away. "You already mentioned that," he replied. "I'm hoping it's not a deal-breaker." Her eyes flicked to his rifle. "That weapon is failing." "Wow," he said, "you really know how to flatter a guy." He shifted his stance, careful not to show how much effort it took. Pain had become a background noise, like static on a bad signal, manageable until it was. He had survived by refusing to think too far ahead. The moment he did, fear started asking very reasonable questions. She walked closer. Each step was measured, deliberate, and somehow heavy without being loud. The technology woven into her suit responded subtly, thin lines of light rippling and then settling again, as if the material itself were breathing. He wondered briefly how much of her was flesh and how much was something else, then decided it didn't matter. Whatever she wasn't here for small talk. "You should have retreated," she said. "Yeah," he nodded. "That was the popular opinion." "Yet you stayed." Bridge looked lonely. That earned him another look, one that lingered longer than before. Curiosity, definitely, perhaps irritation. He suspected she wasn't used to people answering destiny with sarcasm. "You understand what this bridge is," she said. "I understand it connects 2 places," he replied. "Usually that's enough." "It is a strategic artery," she said. "Without it, your species loses this sector." "See, artery. I knew it was medical. No wonder it's bleeding." For a moment he thought she might laugh. Instead, she exhaled slowly, something between patience and restraint. "You are buying time you cannot use." "That's kind of time's whole thing," he said. "Nobody gets to use it properly." She stopped a few paces away now, close enough that he could see the faint patterns along her skin, barely visible beneath the suit, like old scars or natural markings that told stories he would never hear. Her ears tilted slightly, a subtle movement that felt intimate, as if she were tuning into him. "I am called a warlord by your kind," she said. "Not gonna lie," he replied. "That's a strong branding choice." She ignored that. "I command fleets. I decide which worlds burn and which are spared. I do not come to frontlines for entertainment." "Shame," he said. "This place could use an audience." "You intrigued me," she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "A single human delaying a force designed to erase cities. You fought with exhaustion instead of fear." "Fear takes too much energy," he said. "I'm on a budget." Her gaze softened just slightly. "You joke as if you are not aware you will die." "Oh, I'm very aware," he said. "I just don't see how panicking improves the experience." She studied him in silence. The air between them felt charged, not with imminent violence but with something sharper. Evaluation. He had faced interrogations before, but this was different. This was someone deciding whether you were a problem or a lesson. Without warning, she moved. Not toward him, but past him, her hand brushing the air near his shoulder. He spun, barely tracking the motion, and felt a sudden wrench as his rifle was pulled free, disassembled in midair by invisible force. The pieces clattered onto the bridge like embarrassed debris. "Hey," he protested, "that cost more than my last apartment." "You cannot defeat me with this," she said calmly. "Wasn't planning to," he replied, rolling his shoulder. "Mostly, I was hoping to inconvenience you." She raised an eyebrow. "You already have." That was when she struck. Not a killing blow, not even a decisive one. A test. Her fist connected with his chest and sent him sliding backward across the bridge, armor screaming in protest. He hit the railing hard, gasped, and laughed despite himself. "Okay," he wheezed. "That one I felt." She was there an instant later, faster than anything his eyes wanted to admit, lifting him by the front of his armor with one hand. He dangled, feet barely touching the surface. "Yield," she said. He coughed. "Do I get a form to fill out?" Her grip tightened. Pain flared, bright and immediate. Stars danced at the edge of his vision. He knew, suddenly and very clearly, that she could end him whenever she wished. That knowledge should have broken him. Instead, he grinned weakly. "You know," he said, "for someone who burns worlds, you're surprisingly polite about it." Something changed then. A hesitation, a flicker behind her eyes. She released him. He dropped to one knee, sucking in air, heart hammering like it was trying to escape. He stayed there longer than necessary, not because he couldn't stand, but because standing immediately felt like tempting fate. "You are damaged," she said, "and yet you persist." "Doctors hate that," he replied. She circled him slowly, boots whispering against the alloy surface. "Why?" He looked up at her, really looked this time. At the confidence that didn't need volume, at the power that didn't rush, at the faint curiosity she was trying very hard to pretend wasn't there. "Because someone has to," he said, "and everyone else already did their part." Silence settled again, but it was different now. Not the heavy, crushing absence from before. This silence felt like a held breath. Far away, engines roared, her fleet waiting, watching. She stopped in front of him. "If I kill you," she said, "the bridge will fall." "Eventually," he agreed. "Bridges are dramatic like that." "And if I let you live," she continued, "you become a symbol." "Yeah," he sighed, "I hate those." Her lips curved again, just slightly. "You make this difficult." "Story of my life." She turned away, gazing down the length of the bridge toward human space. "You have bought more time than you realize," she said, "but not enough." He pushed himself to his feet, swaying. "Never is." She faced him once more, long ears catching the glow of distant fires. "Rest," she said. "You will need strength." "For what?" he asked, her eyes locked onto his. "For when I return." She stepped back and the air rippled again, reality bending around her form. As she vanished, the silence rushed in, but this time it did not feel like defeat. He laughed softly to himself, wincing as pain reminded him he was still very much alive. "Well," he muttered to the empty bridge, "that went better than expected." The bridge did not sleep, but it rested. Its lights dimmed to a low, steady glow, as if it too were conserving strength. He sat with his back against the railing, legs stretched out, helmet discarded beside him like an apology. Pain had settled into him properly now, no longer sharp, just persistent, the kind that liked to remind you of itself at inconvenient moments. So, he said to no one, apparently I made a warlord curious. That's new. The bridge remained unimpressed. Time passed in fragments. He drank the last of his water, made a face at how warm it had become, and debated whether passing out would count as resting or just poor planning. The silence was different than before. Not empty, expectant. Somewhere beyond the curve of the sky, decisions were being made that would ripple outward, and somehow he was part of that math now. When the sky tore itself open again, he was on his feet before he realized he had moved. This time she did not arrive alone. Her fleet hovered at a distance, massive silhouettes against the stars, weapons powered but idle. An army restrained was more terrifying than one unleashed. She stepped forward from the distortion, the same calm presence, the same measured grace, but something in her posture had shifted. Not uncertainty, consideration. "You came back," he said. "I was worried you ghosted me." "You are still alive," she replied, "against my better judgment." She stopped a few steps away, eyes scanning him openly now. "You did not retreat." "Had a whole plan," he said. "Then I remembered I don't like running." A corner of her mouth twitched. "Your species is inefficient. We prefer the term persistent." She gestured and a projection flared to life between them, a shifting map of the sector. Lines of advance. Points of conflict. The bridge bright and defiant at the center. "My fleet can erase this position," she said, "but the cost is no longer acceptable." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think you were the budgeting type." "I have learned," she said, "that humans change equations." That landed heavier than any blow. He felt it settle somewhere deep, next to the fear he had refused to name. "So what happens now?" She met his gaze fully. "Now we decide what you become." "Was hoping for retired," he said. "Maybe guy who gets a nap." "You stood when entire battalions broke," she said. "You joked when death was certain. You did not beg. Low expectations help." Her ears shifted slightly, an expression he was beginning to recognize as thought. "You force me to see you," she said. "Not as prey, not as obstacle." "And that's good," he asked. "It is inconvenient." He smiled despite himself. "Told you." Behind her, one of the fleet commanders flickered into view, clearly agitated, speaking in a rapid alien tongue. She did not turn. "The bridge remains," she said aloud. "The human remains." There was a pause. Then reluctant acceptance. She waved the projection away and looked at him again, really looked this time. "Your people will tell this story," she said. "They will turn you into something larger than you are." "Yeah," he sighed. "They always do that." "And mine will tell it differently," she continued. "They will speak of a human who did not break, who made a warlord hesitate." "That one sounds nicer," he admitted. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see his reflection faintly in her eyes. "I will withdraw my fleet from this sector." He blinked, just like that. "Not mercy," she said, "recognition." The weight of it hit him all at once. The bridge, the blood, the silence, all of it leading here. He felt something loosen in his chest, something he hadn't realized he was holding. "Well," he said quietly, "guess holding the line worked." "You will not always be alone next time," she said. He chuckled. "I'm counting on that." She extended a hand, palm open. Not a weapon, not a command. An offer. He looked at it, then at her face. "This where I accidentally start an intergalactic incident." "Only if you refuse." He took her hand. The contact was brief, firm, deliberate, a pact without ceremony. When she released him, the air seemed lighter, as if the universe itself had exhaled. "My name," she said after a moment. "You should know it." She told him. The sound of it carried weight and history and something almost musical. He repeated it badly. She winced. "That is not correct. You try pronouncing Massachusetts sometime." That earned him a real laugh. Short, surprised, and unmistakably genuine. Then she stepped back. The distortion formed again, the fleet beginning to turn away, vast and slow, like a storm deciding it had other places to be. Before she vanished, she looked at him one last time. "You have changed," she said. He considered that. The man who had first stepped onto the bridge had been tired, angry, and afraid of being insignificant. Now he felt steady. "Yeah," he said, "I think I did." The silence returned after she was gone, but it was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The bridge hummed softly, proud in its own quiet way. He sat down again, this time without urgency, and leaned back, staring at the sky where the fleet had been. "Well," he said to the bridge, "guess we held." The bridge, if it could speak, would have agreed. Far away, alarms would quiet, orders would change, stories would begin, and on a scarred span of